So are we talking about having people go through experiments to see what works for them, and maybe journaling, like, okay, I'm eating like keto and this is how I feel?
Well, what I do in the program is first of all, I educate people. You got to understand the basic reasons why you're going to go through the change you're going to go through. And we talk about detoxification, what to expect. We talk about the cellular regeneration. And then the other really important concept I bring in is the idea of an internal terrain. You know, what they're now calling the microbiome, which I really love is because they're taking it a little bit beyond beneficial bacteria. I got to eat some beneficial bacteria. Well, it's bigger than that. It's the entire internal state. And the best analogy, because I know you're a big fan of analogies and metaphors.
Yeah.
I love it's in your language.
Give it to me. Come on.
It's like a garden. It really is.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go out and be a farmer to understand these concepts. Just go out and grow 3 plants, flowers, doesn't matter. You will start to see. My wife, just a great example. Like a week ago, she goes, look at this. Oh my God, we bought this plant and its leaves are getting, and so we had to stand there and go and realize, what else does it need? We have to change its terrain because it's not doing well. And sure enough, it was just in too much sun. We moved into the shade. We apologized to the poor thing, and sure enough, a week later, suddenly it's thriving. So the concept of inner terrain is so critical because it gets people to become aware that everything they're eating is adding to acid, alkaline, friendly bacteria, different components. And you're learning to create this internal garden that starts to reflect in the clarity of your eyes, reflect clarity of your skin, how you feel, the smell of your breath in the morning, all of it. So those are some concepts.
Well, you know what I'm hearing you say is that it just variety. So one of the concepts that I learned early on about the microbiome is it's not about like taking huge amounts of 1 or 2 particular strains. It's more about the variety. So they did studies on people as far as the health of their gut and their general health of their microbiome, and it wasn't the quantity, it was the quality and the variety.
The variety, yeah.
So and then the variety of the different strategies, you know, so it's like every aspect of component is like, it's not like a cookie cutter situation. You're testing, you're using variety, and then you're dialing that right in to improve health. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. And I'm really glad you brought up the interview with this idea of what has evolved, because, you know, as teachers, we have to constantly be testing on ourselves. How's it working? And how was what I was eating 5 years ago and teaching, is it still applicable, or do I need to go back and realize, you know, I was too demanding about that particular piece, you know. I had too much leaning on, you know, doing, you know, 30 ounces of juice. There was a period where I got so into juicing, along with everything else, but I still demanded that people were in it. Man, sometimes it just doesn't work for people. Same thing. A few years ago, this was probably 10 years ago, I had a very big awakening around, I used to pretty much tell people, you got to really, during that 28 days, stick to plant-based foods. And I really learned there is a segment of the population that doesn't do well, even on short term, without a little bit of animal food. They just suffer, or even worse. And this is the thing I hate, is when someone does my cleanse and then they throw away all of the knowledge base that they got, and then they go back to that. So they're back to their, you know, their style of eating. I have learned that sometimes you want to add a bit of beef broth, or you want to add some chicken or something, or some fish. The only thing I tell people to do is that, look, if you've eaten animal foods, dairy foods, animals and so forth, your entire life, you owe it to yourself to experiment for a 4-week period of time to see what occurs in your body on a plant-based diet.
I think just to make things clear for people watching this, like, so what's the benefit of this? And my response would be, if you want a strong immune system, you want to live a longer life, you want to have more energy, sleep deeper, have better relationships, have a healthier brain, you got to work on your gut.
You got to work on your gut.
And so the gut needs a healthy variety of microbiome, and maybe we can dive into that here next. The gut needs, you had talked about the sludge factor. I love that. So like, when you're eating a lot of crap food, right, fried food and bad oils and refined carbohydrates, a lot of these things have a sludge factor. Would you speak on that?
Yeah, that's another interesting concept, and this is part of the education I teach before they dive in, the next day to just start, eating cleansing foods. You have to understand these basic concepts, and the whole idea of metabolic waste is another really big, important piece that once you grasp it, you will never go a day without thinking, am I adding to the metabolic waste in my body? Or am I keeping it neutral? Or am I in a place where I'm able to actually start to cleanse? And this is really where the word cleanse came from. It's the removal of metabolic waste. And the concept is pretty easy, that everything that burns, everything that we digest, everything you throw into a fire pit has metabolic waste. It doesn't always burn clean. I used to use the analogy of if you own a cabin or own a house that has a classic fireplace. Well, anyone who does knows that certain types of fuel, certain wood, over the course of even just a couple of weeks of that constant type of fuel, leaves behind an enormous amount of very dangerous metabolic waste in the form of that creosote in the lining, and that's what they can cause fires. It can block it off. You get smoke coming back, and it's because it's not clean, burning clean. Same thing in the body. There are certain foods, certain fats, certain carbohydrates, certain sugar. I mean, there's not certain sugar. All forms of very, very highly refined. Just that one vibration of that food, sucrose is a great example, leaves behind damage in the body or literally metabolic waste.
Yeah.
And so during a cleanse, you're eating foods that are all have been shown a track record through history of burning cleanly. And what that allows you to do is the body then, through a process that they finally have a word for. Back in the days, when we were around, they had no language for it, which was one of the reasons why the classic medical field just couldn't get behind cleansing, because they couldn't grasp the concepts. Well, it finally took some scientists to come up with a word called autolysis or autolyzation. And once they gave that a word in the dictionary that they could look to, it was like it opened up the world to classic medically trained, scientifically trained fields for them to understand the process that we had seen, you and I, for 20, 30, 40 years, and the people that we learned from all those years ago. I can't think of any of their names, but Dr. Bernard Jensen, all those people who saw the diet disease, diet health connection. They didn't know how it was explained, but now they do. It's through autolyzation.
So like, I will give a good example of like metabolic waste factor. So you have the difference between, say, like a cucumber salad, right, with some kale versus a Krispy Kreme donut. Like,
great example.
What is going to create a lot of sludge? And so there's something called a glycated glycated end product. And so when surgeons go in, say, and they might do surgery on a rotator cuff, or they might look at an Achilles tendon, it starts to turn yellow as you get older. And so sometimes it happens in the eyes, right? So you get all this excessive sugar and it causes glaucoma. And so it's basically the tissues turning brown. And so the body's ability to not only detoxify these glycated end products out, but the burden of just throwing so much of that into the system, so it's kind of like some in, some out type of thing. But that's a good example of this metabolic, and I think it's a lot of people watching this, hopefully they've heard that too much refined carbohydrates probably not good for you and causes all kinds of diseases.
Correct.
But I love that example that you gave.
Yeah, I want to go more on what you were just saying about what they're finding out in the joints through surgery and so forth. And you may have better language than I do on this, but what is the metabolic waste that they're now finding in the brain with people with? Yeah.
So with like Alzheimer's, so you have the protein tangles, you know, the beta amyloid plaque, the tau protein, neurofibrillary tangles. I mean, these are immune factors, so they're actually immune cells, and they're starting to look at, you know, chronic inflammation in the brain as well as infections, you know, underdiagnosed infections that then the brain's actually trying to, the immune system's trying to encapsulate them. But it's not just a matter of that, but it's also just the exact example we just gave is the body's not flushing these things out.
Correct.
Right? So when you're in deep sleep, and that's why we are really into these high super physiological doses of melatonin for patients with the neurological issues, is because we're trying to really activate that, it's called the glymphatic system, right?
Yeah.
So a strong glymphatic system is a system that's going to really clear these protein tangles.
I'm really glad you brought up the language behind what they're finding out in the metabolic waste in the brain, because one of the things they're seeing with that is that it is caused by a diet rich in omega-6s, which is the classic American diet. Fried foods, a lot of way too much animal fat, and not enough of the other factors, the omega-3s. Now that's a very simplistic, fish oils and so forth. Now that's kind of a simplistic model of oils. But the point is that there are oils that in excess cause a lot of metabolic waste in the body. And there are other oils that kind of counteract that part of it, the omega-3s, the fish oils, all of that, that have been found to help reverse and remove some of that plaque. That's a classic example of metabolic waste.
Well, it's important for people to understand that it's a balance. You know, there's been people that went way too overboard with the omega-3s and not any of the omega-6s. And that actually stimulates a lot of inflammation as well. So anything that's going to really upregulate a lot of inflammation, of course, the brain is primarily made of fat, right? So the type and the quality of the fats that you are taking in, you know, kind of back to our conversation in the beginning, it's like you're going to be building new, you know, myelin sheaths and different types of aspects of the brain tissue with healthy fats.
Yes, yes. And that, again, goes back to the idea of what is going to be your next set of cells built on.
So I ask everybody what their 5 top tips to prevent getting sick, you know, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, so, you know, viral infection. What would be your 5 top tips to prevent? And then also, if you did get sick, are there 5 things that you might do yourself to kind of get well?
Yeah, good question. 5 things. You have to learn how to feed yourself, and you have to learn how to feed yourself better. And it really helps so that you don't get thrown around by the different food religions or food philosophies, that you really look at a centrist approach to how do I support my body. And the tool I use for that is how have our ancestors who were a walking Petri dish like us, what was the best advice that they could come up with? So take all of those and take other cultures, you know, you might have a Mexican background. Well, learn from the Swedes, learn from the Australians, learn from the Indians, learn from all of them, and just kind of bring it together and start to realize every meal matters. So that's the first one. The second one is we're living in modern times. So, you know, technology's made it a little bit easier. Get a green powder. And people say, which kind? I'm a big fan of blue-green algae just because it's the wild version of it. Yeah. I love that stuff. Been eating it every day. Klamath Lake, man. And you can now get it on Amazon. It's not expensive. You add it. My wife adds it every day to her morning cereal. I add it to my shakes. But I don't care. Again, no religion. Just you want barley green, great. You want spirulina, great. You want the kind that come together and they take 27, great. Get that one, okay? alkalizing, the chlorophyll, all those aspects. Get that in there because it's not easy if you're a busy person to get enough greens. So that's the second one.
Great advice.
Third one, oh God, this is great. People are, and it's unfortunate. This has become sort of like a meme now, where everyone goes, "Oh yeah, everyone's dehydrated." Well, you are, and the only way you're going to ever know how much water you drink is you get a rehydration jug. You take that jug, go to Amazon, go to your local store, whatever it is, you can get them. And I don't care if they've got measurements on the side, I don't care what it is, but generally, guys, we need a gallon. Women, okay, 3 quarts. But basically, figure that out, get that. You fill it up in the morning. Every morning, you cap it, and it never leaves your side. I'm thinking of like people who are going on, they have to drive to work. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
That goes with
and they don't go to bed until they finish drinking.
They
that,
don't
right?
go to bed, and that's the painful part because there's some people that go, "Oh, I forgot." Well, get drinking, and then you pee at night throughout the night. It disrupts your sleep. Well, guess what? Now you won't forget. You have to get all that done.
Early. Yeah.
So those are the big ones.
Oh, that's huge. It's huge. So if you were to get sick, are there some go-to things that you kind of do?
Yeah, interesting. Let's see.
Do you start juicing? Do you fast?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to use a personal example. As I've gotten older, I can't eat the same foods that I used to. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways the body tells me is in joint pain. And it's pretty immediate. And it's actually a little shocking to me. Mm-hmm. I'll wake up in the morning and my knee will hurt. I didn't exercise my knee yesterday. So I'm like, what the hell? Mm. And this is really where I had to cut back. I was vegan, strict vegan, for 16 years. Mm-hmm. And then I started adding some animal food, and I went, this is kind of nice. I like it. It's great. Well, I reached a point where I realized I can't eat a lot of the animal foods. I can't eat a lot of deep red fish. I can't eat there's even certain beans out there that I can't eat because I notice it. So one of the things to do is you pay attention. When you get something wrong, you think, what were some of my cellular regeneration programs over the last 2 weeks? What were the choices that I was making? I used to be able to go and, party down and, once a month go out and have, shots of whatever, tequila or something like that. And man, that's one of the few things I can't really do anymore. Mm-hmm. So even wine gives me such a reaction. My wife drinks wine because it really seems to be really good for her. So you have to look and you cannot go, well, John can eat it. And we're both guys, and so we must be able. You can't use that as the model for understanding your own petri dish. You have to realize I might be different than John. I might be different.
Figure out your kryptonite, right? It's
what's
your kryptonite.
Dude, I'm going to steal that one.
There you go.
That's
yours.
Brilliant. Figure out your kryptonite. That's great. Yeah. Figure out your kryptonite. That's one of them. And then, the fixes for me are flushing. Mm-hmm. It's constant flushing. When I'm ill, no matter what it is, I'm flushing. If it's flu, it's something to do with heat, cold, it's a lot of broths. I mean, broth so much that I'm doing, and it's salty, it's hot. I don't know if it opens up capillaries.
Well, that's the whole chicken soup theory,
chicken
right?
soup theory.
It's the broth.
That's it, man. I always have miso in my house, and that's oftentimes where I use it. I'll wake up and I don't feel good. It's miso soup that day.
Nice.
And the whole key is that I want to be irritated by the amount of peeing I have to do over 3 days. That's a signal that I know that I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
And water and more juices. And in that green stuff, I pound it because I'm putting it into quarts of water. So it's not just like, I got to get a teaspoon down. No, I put it into water, so I'm drinking that, and it's...
Well, what I always tell my patients is you're either a swamp or a river. And if you're watching this is probably the 5th or 6th time you hear me say this. But I'll repeat it again because I don't mind. But we're in Florida. You imagine the amount of bacteria and funguses and viruses that'll be growing in a stagnant pool versus you go to Colorado and you have this nice fresh river. And so you want your body to be more like a river, and that's going to really be a much better situation for your immune system.
That's it. Well put, man. That's it. That's exactly what I do.
Yeah.
I'm swampy when I get sick, and I gotta flush this thing out.
Yeah, for sure, because you're congested, the lungs fill up, you're stiff. Yeah, you're a swamp.
I'm a swamp.
It's like next time I call you, if you're feeling sick, you say, I'm a swamp.
I'm a swamp, man. Can't come out.
I get it, I know.
I can't
All right,
come out, man.
Can't go out in the boat.
Can't go on the boat.
Oh my gosh, Scott, thank you so much
Oh,
for
yeah.
Scott Uhlgren. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I hope to have more of these interviews with you in the future. And for anybody that's watching this, how do they reach you?
Go to howhealthworks.com, howhealthworks.com, or just look up my name, Scott Ohlgren, 28-day cleansing course. They'll find it.
Yeah, check out the 28-day cleanse. I'm going to do the 28-day cleanse with you.
Yeah.
Sure. And then I'll report back. Maybe by the time this airs, I'll be able to write or do a little update on how it went.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.